Some people fall in love once. Others spend their entire lives trying to forget the person they were never supposed to lose. After a painful breakup and the collapse of her publishing career, 26-year-old Olivia Bennett leaves New York behind and returns to the small lakeside town of Willow Creek during the most beautiful spring the town has seen in years. She only plans to stay for a few weeks, long enough to fix her grandmother's old bookstore before selling it, long enough to disappear from her own life for a little while. But everything changes the night she meets Ethan Hayes again, the boy who once promised he would never leave her, the man who disappeared without goodbye 7 years ago. Now Ethan is back in Willow Creek, carrying secrets, scars, and a heartbreak far deeper than Olivia could ever imagine. And as spring slowly transforms the quiet town around them, old feelings begin returning in dangerous ways. Because some love stories don't end when people walk away. Sometimes they wait, hidden inside unfinished conversations, old letters, late-night memories, and the kind of silence only two broken hearts can understand. But Ethan is hiding one truth that could destroy everything between them forever. And this time, love may not survive a second goodbye. Main characters: Olivia Bennett, a passionate but emotionally exhausted former editor trying to rebuild her life after heartbreak and failure. Ethan Hayes, a quiet architect with a painful past who returns to Willow Creek carrying a secret he never intended to reveal. Sophia Bennett, Olivia's warm-hearted grandmother who believes certain people are destined to find each other twice. Daniel Brooks, Olivia's charming ex-boyfriend from New York who suddenly reappears wanting another chance. Mia Collins, Olivia's best friend and owner of Willow Creek Cafe, known for seeing emotional truths before anyone else. Prologue. The letter never sent. Spring arrived early in Willow Creek that year. Cherry blossoms covered the sidewalks like soft pink snow, while warm evening light spilled across the quiet lakeside town. People opened windows again. Children filled the parks. And somewhere near the center of town, inside a tiny bookstore that smelled of old paper and vanilla candles, a forgotten letter waited inside a wooden drawer. Sophia Bennett stood alone behind the bookstore counter while sunlight filtered softly through the windows. Dust floated lazily through the golden light. Outside, the world felt alive again, but Sophia's eyes remained fixed on the letter in her trembling hands. The envelope looked worn with age, edges faded, corners bent, and written carefully across the front were 3 words: "For Olivia Bennett." Sophia sighed softly, then whispered to herself. Sophia said quietly, "You should have sent this years ago." The bell above the bookstore door suddenly rang. Sophia quickly slipped the envelope back into the drawer. A tall man stepped inside, dark hair, tired eyes, spring sunlight catching softly across his face. Ethan Hayes. Sophia smiled gently. Sophia said warmly, "You came back." Ethan looked around the bookstore slowly, like someone revisiting a memory he never fully escaped. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "I wasn't sure if I should." Sophia studied him carefully. Sophia asked softly, "Does she know?" Pain crossed Ethan's expression instantly. Ethan shook his head once. Ethan replied quietly, "No." Outside the bookstore window, cherry blossoms drifted slowly through warm evening air. Sophia looked toward the hidden drawer briefly, then back toward Ethan. Sophia whispered. Sophia said, 7 years is a very long time to carry guilt. Ethan looked down silently. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "I never stopped loving her." The words filled the bookstore quietly. Honest, heavy, real. Sophia's eyes softened immediately. Sophia asked gently, "Then why did you leave without saying goodbye?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly, like the answer physically hurt. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Because loving someone doesn't always mean staying." Silence settled between them. Only the soft sound of pages shifting beneath the spring breeze near the open windows. Then the bookstore bell rang again. Sophia looked toward the entrance immediately, and Ethan's entire expression changed. Olivia Bennett stepped inside the bookstore for the first time in 7 years. Light blue sweater, messy hair from travel, exhaustion hiding behind beautiful eyes. She stopped walking the moment she saw Ethan standing there. Complete silence filled the bookstore. Outside, cherry blossoms drifted slowly through the warm spring air. Olivia whispered softly. Olivia said, "Ethan." Ethan looked at her like someone seeing home after surviving a storm. And somewhere beneath the bookstore counter, the hidden letter remained waiting. Still unopened. Still dangerous. Because some love stories do not begin with meeting someone new. Sometimes they begin when the person you never truly forgot suddenly walks back into your life. Chapter 1. Willow Creek. Spring sunlight poured softly across Willow Creek the next morning. The town looked almost unreal beneath blooming cherry trees and warm golden skies. Flower baskets hung from old street lamps while people filled the sidewalks carrying coffee cups and fresh flowers from the weekend market. Everything felt alive again. Olivia Bennett stood outside her grandmother's bookstore holding a cardboard box against her chest. And somehow, that made everything worse. Because New York never slowed down enough to feel alive. It only distracted people from falling apart. Willow Creek didn't allow distractions. The bookstore windows reflected soft morning light while Ethan Hayes remained frozen near the entrance across from her. Still staring. Still silent. 7 years disappeared between them in one painful second. Olivia finally looked away first. Olivia whispered awkwardly, "You still stare too much." A faint smile almost reached Ethan's face. Almost. Ethan replied quietly, "You still say the first thing you're thinking." Sophia Bennett looked between them carefully from behind the counter inside the bookstore, already sensing the emotional disaster unfolding. Sophia clapped her hands suddenly. Sophia said brightly, "Wonderful. Now both of you stop standing there like divorced movie characters and help me unpack books." Olivia laughed softly despite herself. The sound surprised even her. Ethan looked toward Sophia. Ethan asked carefully, "You want me to stay?" Sophia smiled knowingly. Sophia replied, "Someone has to stop Olivia from organizing books emotionally instead of alphabetically." Olivia rolled her eyes immediately. Olivia muttered, "I organize beautifully." Sophia laughed. Sophia said, "Last time you put tragic romances under self-help." Ethan finally smiled slightly. A real smile this time. Small, dangerous, familiar. And suddenly Olivia hated how quickly her heart remembered him. She carried the box inside without answering. The bookstore smelled exactly the same. Old paper, coffee, vanilla candles, safety. Sunlight spilled across wooden floors while soft jazz played quietly from the radio near the counter. Everything felt untouched by time. Except them. Olivia placed the books carefully beside the back shelves. Then quietly, Olivia asked without turning around, "How long have you been back?" Ethan leaned against the nearby shelf, hands inside his jacket pockets. Ethan replied softly. 3 months. Olivia froze briefly. Olivia turned slowly toward him. Olivia asked quietly, 3 months? Ethan nodded once. Olivia laughed softly. Not happy. Hurt. Olivia said, and you didn't think to tell me? Ethan looked away immediately. Ethan replied quietly, I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. The answer irritated her instantly because part of it was true. Olivia crossed her arms. Olivia asked sharply, so instead you just disappeared again? Sophia quietly moved toward the front counter, giving them space, but not leaving far enough to miss drama. Ethan's expression tightened slightly. Ethan replied softly, I'm here now. Olivia looked at him for several seconds, then laughed bitterly. Olivia whispered, That's kind of the problem. Silence followed. Heavy. Complicated. Outside the bookstore windows, people walked through warm spring sunlight completely unaware that 2 people were trying not to reopen old Heartbreak 10 feet away from romance novels. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan said, How's New York? Olivia immediately looked down at the books in her hands, avoiding the question emotionally before answering verbally. Olivia replied lightly, Loud. Ethan studied her carefully. Ethan asked softly, And? She hesitated, because the real answer sounded pathetic. Lonely. Her publishing career had collapsed 6 months earlier after the company downsized. Daniel left 2 weeks later claiming she had become emotionally unavailable. And the worst part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. Olivia shrugged casually. Olivia whispered, I needed a break. Ethan looked like he wanted to ask more, but didn't. That somehow hurt worse. The bookstore bell suddenly rang again. Mia Collins rushed inside carrying 2 iced coffees and enough energy for the entire town. Mia stopped dramatically the moment she saw Ethan. Mia whispered loudly, Oh my God. Olivia closed her eyes instantly. Mia pointed between them excitedly. Mia shouted, This is happening today. Olivia sighed. Olivia muttered, Please don't. Mia ignored her completely. Mia walked directly toward Ethan. Mia asked suspiciously, Are you emotionally stable now, or should I still hate you? Ethan actually laughed softly. Ethan replied, Still undecided. Mia nodded seriously. Mia said, Fair. Sophia laughed from the counter. Olivia grabbed one of the iced coffees immediately. Olivia muttered, You're all exhausting. Mia looked toward her knowingly. Mia asked casually, So, are we pretending your heart didn't just restart like a dying hospital machine? Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. Ethan looked away, hiding another smile. Olivia glared at Mia. Olivia whispered, I hate you. Mia grinned proudly. Mia replied, No, you don't. You're just emotionally fragile. Outside, warm spring wind drifted through the open bookstore windows, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh rain from somewhere distant. For the first time in months, Olivia felt something besides exhaustion. Dangerous, messy, alive. And every time she looked toward Ethan, it became harder to remember why she ever tried forgetting him in the first place. Then Sophia quietly opened the old drawer beneath the counter. The hidden letter remained inside, waiting. And as she looked toward Ethan and Olivia standing together again, Sophia realized something unsettling. Some love stories survive distance too well, which meant they could also survive heartbreak, and that made them far more dangerous the second time around. Chapter 2. The Boy by the Lake. Warm spring wind moved gently across Willow Lake that evening. Sunlight shimmered across the water while cherry blossom petals drifted lazily through the air like tiny pieces of floating light. The entire town glowed gold beneath sunset. Olivia Bennett walked slowly along the lakeside trail with her camera hanging loosely around her neck. She used to come here constantly as a teenager, back when life still felt simple enough to survive with music, books, and one person who understood her better than anyone else. Ethan Hayes, which was exactly why she should not have come here tonight. And yet, part of her already knew she would. The old wooden dock appeared ahead through the trees, still slightly crooked, still covered in carved initials from years of teenage summers. Olivia slowed the moment she saw him sitting there. Ethan sat near the edge of the dock, staring across the lake while warm evening light reflected softly across the water behind him. Sleeves rolled up, dark hair moving gently in the breeze, a sketchbook resting beside him. For one dangerous second, it felt like 7 years had never happened. Ethan looked up slowly as her footsteps approached. Then quietly, Ethan said, "I had a feeling you'd come here." Olivia folded her arms immediately, defensive by instinct now. Olivia replied, "Your ego's still embarrassing." A small smile touched Ethan's face. Ethan answered softly, "You came anyway." She hated that he was right. Olivia carefully sat at the opposite end of the dock, enough distance to feel safe. Not enough to stop remembering things. Silence settled comfortably between them for several moments. Not awkward, familiar. The sound of water moved gently beneath the dock while distant music drifted faintly from downtown Willow Creek. Olivia finally looked toward the sketchbook beside him. Olivia asked quietly, "You still draw?" Ethan glanced toward it, then nodded once. Ethan replied softly, "Sometimes." Olivia reached toward the sketchbook before stopping herself halfway. Ethan noticed immediately. Without speaking, he handed it toward her. Olivia hesitated briefly before opening it, and instantly froze. Every page contained sketches of Willow Creek, the bookstore, the lake, Maple Street during spring, and her. Dozens of drawings of her. Olivia stared silently at the pages. Some sketches looked recent, others clearly older. Years older. One drawing showed her sitting inside the bookstore reading near the window. Another captured her laughing at the lakeside carnival from years ago. One sketch simply showed her sleeping against the bookstore counter with sunlight across her face. Olivia's chest tightened painfully. Olivia whispered, "Ethan." He looked away toward the lake immediately, almost embarrassed. Ethan said quietly, "I didn't know how to stop." The honesty in his voice hurt more than excuses ever could. Olivia slowly closed the sketchbook. Olivia asked softly, "Why did you leave?" The question finally arrived. 7 years late, still sharp enough to wound both of them instantly. Ethan became very still beside her. Warm wind moved across the lake while sunset deepened around them. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "I thought disappearing would hurt you less." Olivia laughed softly. "Broken." Olivia whispered, "You don't get to decide that for someone." Ethan nodded once, accepting it. Ethan replied quietly, "I know." Silence returned. Heavier now. Olivia stared toward the lake, trying to slow the emotions rising inside her chest. Because part of her wanted to stay angry, it would be easier, safer. But Ethan had always ruined her ability to stay emotionally logical. She looked toward him again carefully. Olivia asked softly, "Did you ever think about calling me?" Ethan smiled sadly, then whispered. Ethan replied, "Every day." The answer landed harder than she expected. Olivia looked down immediately. Ethan continued quietly. Ethan said, "I wrote messages I never sent." Olivia whispered, "Why not?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Because every version sounded selfish." The sky above Willow Lake turned deeper shades of orange and pink, while soft spring air carried the scent of flowers nearby. Olivia studied him carefully now. He looked older, not physically, emotionally, like someone who spent years carrying invisible weight alone. Then she noticed something else, a faint scar near his wrist, partially hidden beneath his sleeve. Olivia frowned slightly. Olivia asked quietly, "What happened to your hand?" Ethan immediately pulled his sleeve down. Too quickly. Ethan replied casually, "Construction accident." Lie. Olivia knew instantly. Not because of the words, because Ethan never made eye contact when he lied. She almost pushed further, almost asked more. But something in his expression stopped her. Pain lived there, deep enough to remain untouched for now. The first stars slowly appeared above the lake. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan said, "Are you happy?" The question caught her completely off guard. Olivia laughed softly. Olivia replied lightly, "That's a dangerous question after sunset." Ethan smiled faintly. Ethan whispered, "Still avoiding honesty with jokes." She looked toward him for several seconds, then finally answered truthfully. Olivia whispered, "I don't know anymore." The words felt smaller once spoken aloud, sad enough to become real. Ethan looked toward the water quietly, then softly. Ethan said, "I used to think happiness was something you found." A pause. "Now I think it's someone you stop running from." Olivia's heart betrayed her immediately at those words, because despite everything, part of her still felt safest beside him. And that terrified her more than heartbreak ever did. A soft breeze moved across the lake again. Cherry blossoms drifted slowly through the evening air around them. Then Ethan looked toward her carefully and asked the one question she wasn't prepared for. Ethan whispered softly, "Did you ever hate me?" Olivia looked at him silently for several seconds, long enough for both of them to feel the truth arriving before the answer itself. Then quietly, Olivia replied, "I tried to, and somehow that hurt Ethan more." Chapter 3. Coffee and Almost Conversations. The next morning arrived warm and impossibly bright. Spring sunlight flooded Willow Creek while flower petals drifted through the streets beneath soft blue skies. The town cafe overflowed with people escaping the beautiful weather for iced coffee and lazy conversation. Olivia Bennett should have stayed home. Instead, she walked directly into Mia Collins' cafe at 10 in the morning, emotionally unprepared for life. The smell of cinnamon and fresh coffee wrapped around her instantly, while soft acoustic music played through hidden speakers. Mia stood behind the counter arranging pastries dramatically like she hosted a cooking show nobody asked for. The moment she saw Olivia, she smirked. Mia asked immediately, "So how emotionally devastating was the lake conversation?" Olivia sighed heavily. Olivia muttered, "I hate this town." Mia grinned proudly. Mia replied, "No, you don't. You hate unresolved feelings." Olivia dropped into the nearest chair dramatically. Olivia whispered, "He still says things like a man written by women." Mia nearly dropped a coffee cup laughing. Mia pointed at her accusingly. Mia said, "Oh my God, you're in trouble." Olivia rubbed her forehead. Olivia muttered, "I was in trouble 7 years ago." The cafe bell above the entrance suddenly rang. Olivia didn't need to look up. Her body already recognized him first. Ethan Hayes stepped inside carrying spring sunlight behind him, and somehow, the entire cafe atmosphere changed immediately. Mia whispered dramatically. Mia said, "This is my favorite television show." Olivia glared at her. Ethan noticed Olivia instantly, then hesitated near the doorway like someone unsure whether he was welcome. Mia solved the problem immediately. Mia shouted cheerfully, "Sit with her. She's pretending not to miss you." Olivia nearly choked on air itself. Ethan laughed softly under his breath before walking toward the table. He stopped across from Olivia carefully. Ethan asked quietly, "Can I?" Olivia should have said no. Instead, Olivia replied softly, "You're already standing there." Ethan sat down slowly. Silence settled between them again. Not awkward, just crowded with things neither knew how to say yet. Mia placed 2 coffees on the table aggressively. Mia announced, "1 caramel latte for Olivia because she likes pretending life is sweet." Then she placed the second cup near Ethan. Mia continued, "And black coffee for Ethan because emotionally unavailable men love suffering." Ethan laughed unexpectedly. A real laugh this time, warm enough to make Olivia's chest tighten painfully. Mia walked away victorious. Olivia shook her head slowly. Olivia muttered, "She's gotten worse." Ethan smiled slightly. Ethan replied, "No, she's exactly the same." Sunlight spilled softly across the table between them while people moved through the cafe around them laughing and talking about ordinary things. Olivia looked down at her coffee cup carefully. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "Why Willow Creek again?" Ethan became still for half a second, almost unnoticeable. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Work." Another lie. She heard it immediately. Olivia looked toward him directly. Olivia whispered, "You are never good at lying to me." Ethan held her gaze for several seconds, then looked away first. Ethan replied quietly, "Some things are complicated." Olivia laughed softly. Olivia said, "That usually means painful." Ethan didn't disagree. Outside the cafe windows, warm spring wind moved through blooming trees while sunlight danced across the sidewalks. For a moment, everything looked peaceful enough to believe people could actually heal here. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan said, "Do you still write?" The question hit unexpectedly hard. Olivia wrapped both hands around her coffee cup slowly. Olivia replied carefully, "Not much." Ethan frowned slightly. Ethan asked softly, "Why?" "Because failure changes people. Because rejection exhausts creativity. Because somewhere between heartbreak and survival, she stopped believing her words mattered." But Olivia only shrugged lightly. Olivia replied, "Life happened." Ethan studied her face quietly. Like he could still read emotions she tried hiding. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "You used to love it." Olivia smiled sadly. Olivia replied, "I used to love a lot of things." Silence followed, heavy enough to carry meaning both of them understood instantly. Ethan looked down briefly. Then quietly, Ethan said, "You shouldn't let pain make decisions for you." Olivia laughed softly. Olivia whispered, "That sounds suspiciously personal." Ethan looked toward the window immediately, avoiding the truth again. And Olivia suddenly realized something important. Whatever happened to Ethan, it still controlled him. Before she could ask more, the cafe bell rang again. A tall man entered wearing an expensive coat and carrying the kind of confidence New York teaches people to fake professionally. Daniel Brooks. Olivia's entire body froze. Mia looked up from behind the counter, then whispered dramatically. Mia said, "Oh no." Ethan turned slowly toward the entrance. Daniel smiled immediately after spotting Olivia, then walked directly toward their table. Olivia whispered under her breath. Olivia muttered, "You have got to be kidding me." Daniel stopped beside the table with the same charming smile that once convinced Olivia love could survive ambition. Daniel looked toward Ethan briefly, then back toward Olivia. Daniel asked casually, "You weren't answering your phone?" Olivia stared at him in complete disbelief. Olivia asked quietly, "So you came across 3 states?" Daniel smiled slightly. Daniel replied, "I wanted to see you." Ethan leaned back silently in his chair, emotion unreadable now. But Olivia noticed one thing immediately. His hands had tightened around the coffee cup, and suddenly, the peaceful spring morning didn't feel peaceful anymore. Chapter 4. Things We Never Said. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too warm, too crowded with unfinished history. Daniel Brooks stood beside the table like he still belonged there. Like 7 months without a phone call meant nothing. Like heartbreak could be paused and resumed whenever convenient. Olivia stared at him in disbelief. Olivia whispered, "What are you doing here?" Daniel glanced around the cafe casually before looking back at her. Daniel replied smoothly, "You disappeared." Mia nearly dropped a tray behind the counter. Mia muttered loudly, "The audacity is honestly inspirational." Olivia ignored her. Barely. Daniel finally noticed Ethan properly now. His expression changed slightly. Careful, observant. Daniel asked politely, "Friend?" Before Olivia could answer, Ethan replied calmly, "Something like that." The tension between them arrived instantly. Quiet, sharp, male. Daniel pulled another chair toward the table without invitation. Olivia blinked. Olivia asked incredulously, "Are you seriously sitting down?" Daniel smiled lightly. Daniel replied, "You always said avoiding difficult conversations was unhealthy." Olivia laughed once. Cold. Olivia whispered, "You mean like disappearing emotionally for 2 years while we were dating?" The cafe around them became noticeably quieter. Several nearby people pretended not to listen very badly. Daniel leaned back slightly. Daniel replied calmly, "I deserve that." Ethan remained silent beside her, but Olivia noticed something dangerous in his expression now. Protectiveness. And somehow, that irritated her emotionally even more. Because she didn't need saving. At least that's what she kept telling herself. Daniel looked toward Ethan again. Daniel asked casually, "So how do you two know each other?" Olivia immediately reached for her coffee, mostly to avoid eye contact. Ethan answered quietly. Ethan replied, "We grew up together." Daniel nodded slowly, then smiled slightly. Daniel asked, "First love situation?" Olivia nearly inhaled coffee into another dimension. Mia whispered dramatically from the counter. Mia said, "I need popcorn." Olivia glared at her instantly. Daniel looked between Olivia and Ethan carefully now, realization beginning to settle. Then softly, Daniel said, "Oh." Ethan finally spoke again, calm, controlled. Ethan asked quietly. "Why are you here, Daniel?" The directness surprised everyone slightly, especially Olivia. Daniel looked toward her instead of Ethan while answering. Daniel replied softly, "Because I made a mistake." The words hung heavily in the cafe. Olivia looked away immediately, because part of her hated hearing that now. Not because she still loved Daniel, because she once begged him to care enough to say it, and he waited until after she was gone. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Daniel said quietly, "I should have fought harder for us." Ethan's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Olivia whispered carefully, "Daniel." Daniel continued softly. Daniel said, "I know I hurt you." A pause, "But I still love you." Complete silence fell across the table. Outside, spring sunlight still poured across Willow Creek like nothing painful had ever happened in the world. Olivia felt suddenly exhausted, emotionally, physically, completely, because once upon a time, those words would have healed her. Now they only confused her. Ethan slowly stood from the table. Olivia looked toward him immediately. Ethan grabbed his jacket quietly. Ethan said softly, "I should go." Something inside Olivia reacted instantly to that. Panic, small, embarrassing, real. Olivia stood too quickly. Olivia asked softly, "Why?" Ethan looked toward Daniel briefly, then back toward her. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sad enough to hurt." Ethan replied quietly, "Feels like this conversation belongs to you two." Before Olivia could answer, he walked toward the cafe exit, and suddenly, leaving hurt again. Daniel noticed it too. Olivia watched Ethan disappear into the bright spring sunlight outside, then looked down immediately, trying not to feel things she wasn't ready for. Daniel studied her carefully. Then quietly, Daniel asked, "Do you still love him?" The question hit too directly, too honestly. Olivia laughed softly. Nervously, Olivia whispered, "I haven't seen him in 7 years." Daniel didn't move, didn't look away. Then quietly, Daniel said, "That wasn't my question." The truth terrified her because she didn't know the answer yet. Or maybe she already did. Mia suddenly walked toward the table carrying fresh pastries nobody ordered. Mia placed them aggressively between Olivia and Daniel. Mia announced, "I'm emotionally intervening." Daniel blinked. Mia pointed toward him. Mia said firmly, "You broke her heart." Then she pointed toward the cafe door Ethan exited through. Mia continued, "And that one disappeared mysteriously like a sad poet in a train station." Olivia closed her eyes instantly. Mia folded her arms dramatically. Mia sighed, frankly. "Olivia's taste in men has exhausted me spiritually." Daniel actually laughed softly. Olivia muttered, "Can everyone stop talking about my emotional damage like it's public entertainment?" Mia and Daniel both answered immediately, "Because it is." Olivia stared at them in betrayal. Then, despite herself, she laughed, small, real. But later that evening, long after Daniel left the cafe, Olivia stood alone inside the bookstore, unable to stop thinking about Ethan walking away. The spring sunset glowed softly through the windows, while warm air drifted between the shelves. Sophia Bennett quietly approached from behind carrying old books. Sophia asked gently, "Your heart hurting again?" Olivia sighed heavily. Olivia muttered, "I don't know what I'm feeling." Sophia smiled knowingly. Sophia replied softly, "That's usually how love returns." Olivia leaned against the shelf tiredly. Then quietly, Olivia asked, Do you think people really get second chances? Sophia looked toward the hidden drawer beneath the counter, where the unopened letter still waited. Then softly, Sophia answered, "Only if they finally tell the truth." And somewhere across town, Ethan Hayes sat alone in his apartment staring at dozens of unsent messages addressed to Olivia Bennett. Messages written over 7 years, every single one unfinished. Because some people do not stop loving someone when they leave. They simply learn how to suffer quietly. Chapter 5. Spring Lights. Willow Creek looked magical during the Spring Lantern Festival. By sunset, the entire town glowed beneath strings of golden light stretched across the streets while music drifted through warm evening air. Flower petals covered the sidewalks. Food stands filled the town square with the smell of cinnamon, coffee, and fresh pastries. People laughed easier during spring in Willow Creek, like winter's sadness finally loosened its grip. Olivia Bennett stood outside the bookstore adjusting the sleeve of her light cream-colored dress nervously, which irritated her because she was absolutely not nervous. Mia Collins leaned against the doorway holding 2 festival lanterns dramatically. Mia smirked. Mia asked, "So which emotional disaster are we dressing for tonight?" Olivia glared immediately. Olivia replied, "Nobody." Mia nodded seriously. Mia said, "That's why you changed outfits 3 times." Olivia crossed her arms. Olivia muttered, "You're exhausting." Mia grinned proudly. Mia handed her a lantern. Mia asked casually, "Daniel or Ethan?" Olivia nearly dropped the lantern. Olivia whispered, "Can you lower your voice before the entire town starts betting on my love life?" Mia leaned closer dramatically. Mia whispered loudly, "Too late. Mrs. Patterson already owes me $20. Olivia stared at her in disbelief. Olivia asked, "You turned my emotional crisis into gambling." Mia shrugged proudly. Mia replied, "Local businesses need support." Before Olivia could answer, the sound of live music drifted across the square. Soft guitar, warm laughter, golden lights everywhere. And then she saw him. Ethan Hayes stood near the center fountain beneath hanging lanterns talking to Sophia. Dark jacket sleeves rolled slightly upward, spring lights reflecting softly across his face. And suddenly, the entire festival blurred around her. Mia noticed instantly. Mia whispered, "Oh, you're in serious trouble." Olivia looked away quickly. Olivia muttered, "I'm leaving." Mia grabbed her arm immediately. Mia said sharply, "No, you are not. You survived New York publishing companies. You can survive eye contact." Too late. Ethan looked up and immediately found her in the crowd. Silence settled strangely between them despite the busy festival around them. Then slowly, Ethan smiled. Small, warm, dangerous. Olivia's heart betrayed her instantly. Sophia noticed everything and wisely disappeared toward the bakery stand before emotional complications exploded publicly. Ethan walked toward Olivia carefully, like someone approaching a memory that still mattered too much. The lantern lights above them swayed softly in the spring breeze. Ethan stopped beside her. Then quietly, Ethan said, "You came." Olivia folded her arms defensively. Olivia replied lightly, "Apparently my absence would affect local gambling economies." Ethan looked confused briefly. Mia waved proudly from across the street. Ethan laughed softly under his breath. God, that laugh again. Olivia immediately looked away before her feelings became visible to the entire state. The festival crowd moved around them while music floated softly through the warm night air. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan said, "Can we walk?" Olivia hesitated, because every moment beside him lately felt emotionally unsafe. But somehow, she still nodded. They walked slowly through Willow Creek beneath glowing spring lights, while vendors called out from nearby stands, and children ran laughing through the streets, holding paper lanterns. For several minutes, neither spoke. Not uncomfortable, just full of almost conversations. Then Ethan stopped near a small flower stand beside the lake path. The elderly woman running it smiled immediately after seeing them together. Flower vendor whispered dramatically, "Finally." Olivia blinked. Ethan sighed quietly. Ethan muttered, "Mrs. Green." The woman ignored him completely. Instead, she handed Olivia a small bundle of white flowers. Mrs. Green smiled warmly. Mrs. Green said, "He used to buy these every spring." Olivia froze slightly, then slowly looked toward Ethan. Ethan looked genuinely uncomfortable now. Olivia whispered softly, "You bought flowers?" Mrs. Green answered before Ethan could. Mrs. Green replied proudly, "Every year." Silence. Olivia looked toward Ethan carefully. Ethan avoided eye contact immediately. Then quietly, Ethan admitted, "You like these." Her chest tightened painfully. Olivia whispered, "Even after you left?" Ethan finally looked at her, and the emotion in his eyes nearly destroyed her composure completely. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Especially after I left." The spring breeze moved gently through the trees around them. Lantern light reflected softly across the lake nearby. For one dangerous moment, everything between them felt unfinished in the most beautiful way possible. Then suddenly, a familiar voice interrupted behind them. Daniel said lightly, "I was wondering where you disappeared to." Olivia closed her eyes instantly. "Of course." Daniel approached, carrying 2 drinks and enough confidence to irritate the moon itself. His eyes shifted briefly between Olivia and Ethan. Understanding arrived immediately. Daniel smiled politely. Too politely. Daniel asked casually, "Am I interrupting something?" Maya appeared from nowhere, holding fried pastries like she summoned herself through emotional chaos. Mia whispered dramatically. Mia said, "This night is unbelievable." Olivia wanted the ground to open beneath her. Ethan stepped slightly backward, creating space immediately. Too immediately. That hurt more than it should have. Daniel handed Olivia one of the drinks. Daniel smiled softly. Daniel asked, "Dance with me." Music drifted warmly from the town square nearby, where couples already danced beneath glowing lantern lights. Olivia hesitated, then instinctively looked toward Ethan, and that tiny unconscious action changed everything. Because Ethan noticed, so did Daniel, and, unfortunately, so did Olivia. The silence that followed carried more emotion than actual words ever could. Then Ethan quietly stepped back further. Ethan said softly, "You should go." Olivia stared at him. Something inside her wanted him to stop her, to say don't go, to fight for her once. But Ethan only smiled faintly, sadness hiding behind it again, and whispered. Ethan said, "You look happy tonight." The problem was, she wasn't happy, not even close, because for the first time in years, Olivia Bennett realized she was still hopelessly in love with the boy who once disappeared without goodbye. And that realization terrified her more than heartbreak ever had. Chapter 6. The Apartment in New York. The festival ended with music, lanterns, and too many emotions Olivia Bennet no longer knew how to organize. By midnight, Willow Creek had quieted beneath soft spring winds, while flower petals drifted across empty sidewalks glowing under streetlights. But Olivia couldn't sleep. Because Ethan's voice still lived inside her head, especially after I left. Which was unfair, cruel, honestly. Olivia sat alone on the bookstore rooftop, wrapped in a blanket with a half-finished cup of tea beside her. The town below looked peaceful beneath the stars, too peaceful for the emotional disaster happening inside her chest. The rooftop door creaked open softly behind her. Sophia Bennet stepped outside carrying another blanket. Sophia smiled knowingly. Sophia asked gently, "Heartbreak or confusion?" Olivia laughed quietly. Olivia replied, "Can I pick both?" Sophia sat beside her slowly. Warm spring air moved softly through the night around them. For several moments neither spoke. Then Olivia whispered. Olivia said softly, "Why does seeing him still hurt?" Sophia looked toward the glowing town below. Sophia replied quietly, "Because love doesn't disappear simply because time passes." Olivia looked down at her tea. Olivia whispered, "That sounds deeply inconvenient." Sophia laughed softly. Sophia replied, "Real love usually is." Silence settled again. Then Olivia quietly asked. Olivia said, "Do you think he loved me all those years?" Sophia smiled gently. Then softly, Sophia answered, "Olivia, some people leave physically long before they leave emotionally." The words stayed with her long after Sophia went back downstairs. And unfortunately, the next morning made everything worse. Because Daniel Brooks arrived at the bookstore carrying coffee and emotional persistence. Olivia opened the door wearing pajamas and immediate regret. Daniel smiled warmly. Daniel asked casually, "Too early for apologies?" Olivia stared at him, then muttered. Olivia replied, "You flew across the country to become emotionally annoying in person." Daniel laughed softly. Daniel stepped inside, holding up 2 coffees like peace offerings. Daniel replied, "I deserve that too." The bookstore smelled like fresh paper and morning sunlight, while soft spring rain tapped gently against the windows outside. Daniel looked around the shop slowly. Then quietly, Daniel said, "This place feels like you." Olivia folded her arms carefully. Olivia replied, "That sentence would have worked better before the breakup." Daniel nodded once, accepting it. Then, softly, Daniel admitted, "I know." The honesty surprised her slightly. Daniel placed the coffee cups near the counter. Then, quietly, Daniel asked, "Can we talk honestly for once?" Olivia hesitated, but eventually nodded. They sat near the bookstore window while soft spring rain blurred the streets outside. Daniel looked different here in Willow Creek. Less polished, less controlled, more human somehow. Then quietly, Daniel said, "I think New York changed us in bad ways." Olivia looked toward him silently. Daniel continued softly. Daniel said, "Everything became about surviving." A pause. Work, deadlines, exhaustion. Olivia looked down slowly, because that part was true. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Daniel whispered, "And somewhere in all of that, I stopped seeing how unhappy you were." Her chest tightened unexpectedly, not because she missed him, because part of her had waited so long to hear him finally understand. Olivia whispered quietly. Olivia replied, "I felt invisible." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, pain crossing his expression. Then softly, Daniel admitted. I know. Rain moved gently against the windows while silence filled the bookstore. Then Daniel looked toward her carefully. Daniel asked softly, Is there someone else? Olivia froze slightly, because she didn't know how to answer honestly. Ethan wasn't someone else. He was someone before, someone unfinished. Olivia looked away toward the rain outside. Then quietly, Olivia whispered, I don't know what Ethan and I are. Daniel nodded slowly, like he expected the answer already. Then softly, Daniel asked, Do you still love him? The question hurt because this time, she knew the answer. Olivia stayed silent too long, and silence answered for her. Daniel smiled sadly. Daniel whispered, Yeah. The bookstore bell suddenly rang, and as if the universe personally enjoyed emotional violence, Ethan Hayes stepped inside carrying rolled architectural plans beneath one arm. He stopped immediately after seeing Daniel. Daniel slowly looked toward him. Silence. Awful silence. Ethan's eyes briefly shifted toward Olivia, trying to understand the situation emotionally in one glance. Olivia stood too quickly. Olivia said awkwardly, Ethan. Daniel calmly stood beside the table. Then quietly, Daniel asked, So you're the reason she stopped answering my calls? Olivia whispered immediately. Olivia replied, Daniel, don't. Ethan remained calm. Too calm. Then softly, Ethan replied, No, I think I'm just the reason she remembers who she was before New York. The words landed directly between them, sharp enough to cut. Daniel laughed once quietly, not amused. Daniel asked, And who exactly was that? Ethan looked toward Olivia briefly before answering. Then softly, Ethan replied, Someone who smiled more. Olivia's heart nearly collapsed right there beside the romance section. Because the worst part was, he was right. The tension inside the bookstore became unbearable instantly. Daniel grabbed his coat slowly. Then quietly, Daniel said, I think I finally understand what this is. Olivia stepped toward him carefully. Olivia whispered, Daniel. He smiled sadly. Then softly, Daniel replied, You never stopped waiting for him, did you? Silence answered louder than words ever could. Daniel looked toward Ethan one final time. Then quietly, Daniel said, Don't disappear on her again. And just like that, he walked out into the spring rain, leaving Olivia standing speechless inside the bookstore. Ethan looked toward the closed door quietly, then toward her. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then softly, Ethan whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. And somehow, that hurt her even more. Chapter 7. Midnight on Maple Street. Rain stopped just before midnight. Willow Creek glowed softly beneath wet streetlights while spring wind moved gently through the trees lining Maple Street. The entire town felt quiet in the way only small towns do after midnight. Peaceful, lonely, dangerously honest. Olivia Bennett couldn't sleep. Again. Daniel's words still echoed painfully inside her head. You never stopped waiting for him, did you? The worst part was, she didn't know if she ever truly moved on at all. Olivia pulled her sweater tighter around herself while walking slowly through the empty streets. Warm spring air carried the scent of rain and flowers through the night. Then she noticed the light. Ethan Hayes stood outside the old community theater halfway down Maple Street, adjusting wooden boards beneath the glowing marquee sign. Alone. At midnight. like an emotionally complicated movie scene written specifically to ruin her peace. Olivia stopped beneath a streetlight. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "Do architects normally work at midnight, or are you just avoiding feelings professionally?" Ethan looked up immediately, and despite everything, he smiled. Ethan replied softly, "Could ask you the same thing." Olivia walked closer slowly. The old theater looked beautiful beneath the spring lights. Fresh paint, restored windows, flower baskets hanging beside the entrance. Olivia frowned slightly. Olivia asked, "You renovated this?" Ethan nodded once. Ethan replied quietly, "Started last winter." Olivia looked around carefully. Then softly, Olivia whispered, "It's beautiful." Ethan looked toward the theater, then toward her, and quietly answered. Ethan said, "It reminded me of you." Her heart betrayed her immediately again. At this point, it honestly deserved legal consequences. Olivia looked away toward the empty street, trying to recover emotionally. Then, quietly, Olivia asked, "Why does everything somehow lead back to me with you?" Ethan became still for several seconds. Then, softly, Ethan replied, "Because I never really left you behind." The honesty in his voice shattered something inside her. Warm wind moved through the trees above them, while soft jazz drifted faintly from a distant apartment nearby. Olivia looked toward him carefully now, really looked. Exhaustion lived behind his eyes, pain too old to hide properly anymore. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "What happened to you, Ethan?" He looked away instantly. Olivia stepped closer. Olivia whispered, "And don't say nothing this time." Silence stretched heavily between them. Ethan slowly sat on the theater steps. Then, after several long seconds, Ethan whispered quietly, "My dad got sick." Olivia froze. Ethan stared toward the wet street below. Then softly, Ethan continued, "Right before I left Willow Creek." Her chest tightened instantly. Ethan laughed bitterly under his breath. Ethan said quietly, "Cancer." Olivia sat beside him slowly, not touching him, just close enough to listen. Ethan rubbed both hands together tiredly. Then softly, Ethan admitted, "It happened fast." Rainwater still dripped softly from rooftops around them while spring wind moved through the empty street. Ethan looked down at his hands, then whispered. Ethan said, "My mom was already gone. Medical bills kept growing." A pause, and I couldn't fix any of it. Olivia listened silently, heartbreaking slowly beside him. Ethan continued quietly. Ethan said, "New York offered me work through an architecture program." Olivia looked toward him carefully. Ethan whispered, "It was enough money to help him survive treatment." Suddenly, everything changed. All these years, Olivia believed Ethan left because he stopped loving her. But now, the pain in his voice told a different story completely. Olivia whispered softly. Olivia asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Because you had dreams." Olivia frowned immediately. Ethan looked toward her, eyes filled with emotion now. Then softly, Ethan continued, "You were finally getting accepted into publishing internships. Your writing was taking off." Olivia's chest tightened painfully. Ethan whispered. Ethan said, "I couldn't ask you to stay in Willow Creek watching my life fall apart." Tears burned behind her eyes instantly. Olivia whispered shakily. Olivia asked, "So instead, you broke my heart?" Ethan looked devastated by the question. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "I thought losing me would hurt less." The exact same words from the lake. But now she finally understood the weight behind them. Olivia laughed softly through tears. Olivia whispered, "You really were stupid." Ethan smiled faintly. Sad, tired. Ethan nodded once. Ethan replied quietly, "Unbelievably." Silence settled around them again, but softer now, more honest. Then Olivia noticed something else. The scar on Ethan's wrist again, more visible beneath the streetlight. This time, she reached for his hand before thinking. Ethan froze instantly beneath her touch. Olivia looked carefully at the faded scar. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "This wasn't a construction accident?" Ethan gently pulled his hand away, too gently, like he already knew hiding was pointless now. He looked toward the empty street for several long seconds. Then softly, Ethan admitted, "After my dad died," a pause, "things got bad." Olivia stopped breathing for half a second. Ethan laughed quietly without humor. Ethan whispered, "I stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly." Spring wind moved softly around them while distant thunder rolled somewhere beyond the lake. Then Ethan finally said the words that terrified her most. Ethan whispered quietly, "I didn't think I wanted to stay alive for a while." Olivia's eyes filled instantly, because suddenly, she understood everything. The disappearing, the silence, the sadness living permanently behind his smile. Ethan had not left because he stopped loving her. He left because he was drowning, and he thought love meant sinking alone. Olivia looked toward him with tears threatening to fall. Then quietly, Olivia whispered, "You should have called me." Ethan finally looked at her again, raw emotion visible now, unprotected. Then, softly, Ethan replied, "I wanted to hear your voice every single day." And beneath the glowing spring streetlights of Maple Street, Olivia Bennett realized she had never truly stopped belonging to him either. Chapter 8. The Bookstore Promise. Spring sunlight filled the bookstore the next morning. Warm golden light spilled across shelves of old novels while soft wind drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh coffee from the cafe nearby. For the first time in years, Olivia Bennett woke up feeling something dangerously close to hopeful, which immediately made her suspicious, because hope had betrayed her before. She stood near the front counter reorganizing books for the third time in 20 minutes, while trying not to think about Ethan Hayes sitting beneath streetlights at midnight admitting he almost didn't survive his grief. Unfortunately, thinking about Ethan had become impossible to avoid lately. Sophia Bennett watched her quietly over the rim of her teacup, then smiled knowingly. Sophia asked gently, "So are we emotionally healing today or spiraling romantically?" Olivia groaned immediately. Olivia muttered, "Can everyone in this town read minds?" Sophia laughed softly. Sophia replied, "No, sweetheart. You've alphabetized the same shelf 4 times. Olivia looked toward the books, then sighed dramatically. Olivia whispered, "I hate feelings." The bookstore bell rang before Sophia could respond. Olivia looked up automatically, and her heart immediately forgot how to function normally again. Ethan stepped inside carrying paint cans and rolled blueprints beneath one arm. Sunlight followed him into the bookstore. Honestly unfair behavior from the universe at this point. Sophia smiled immediately. Sophia said brightly, "Perfect timing." Olivia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Sophia looked between them innocently, then casually announced, Sophia said, "The bookstore needs renovating." Olivia blinked. Olivia asked slowly, "Since when?" Sophia sipped tea peacefully. Sophia replied, "Since 30 seconds ago." Ethan laughed softly under his breath. Olivia stared at both of them in betrayal. Olivia whispered, "You're manipulating me emotionally." Sophia smiled proudly. Sophia replied, "Correct." 20 minutes later. Olivia stood on a ladder repainting the bookstore wall while Ethan worked beside the front shelves repairing damaged wood panels. Soft acoustic music played through the radio while warm spring air moved through the open windows. And somehow, it felt natural, dangerously natural. Olivia carefully rolled paint across the wall. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "So you renovate theaters now?" Ethan glanced toward her. Ethan replied softly, "Mostly old buildings." Olivia smiled slightly. Olivia asked, "You always liked fixing broken things?" The moment the words left her mouth, silence followed, because both of them understood the accidental meaning immediately. Ethan looked down at the wooden shelf in his hands. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Not always successfully." Olivia's chest tightened again. God. Everything between them carried emotional weight now. Even breathing probably had unresolved feelings attached. A soft breeze moved through the bookstore carrying flower petals briefly inside. Then Ethan suddenly asked. Ethan said quietly, "Why did you stop writing?" Olivia froze slightly. She dipped the paint rollers slowly into the tray below, avoiding eye contact. Olivia replied lightly, "You really like dangerous conversations?" Ethan smiled faintly. Ethan answered softly, "Only with you." That absolutely did not help her emotional stability. Olivia climbed down from the ladder slowly. Then quietly, Olivia admitted, "After New York, I stopped believing I was good enough." Ethan looked toward her immediately. Olivia laughed softly without humor. Olivia continued. Publishing became numbers and deadlines and rejection emails. Sunlight shifted gently across the bookstore floor between them. Olivia looked down at her paint-covered hands, then whispered. Olivia said, "At some point writing stopped feeling like love." A pause. It started feeling like failure. Silence filled the bookstore softly. Ethan walked toward her slowly. Then quietly, Ethan asked, "Do you know what your problem is?" Olivia narrowed her eyes immediately. Olivia replied, "This should be interesting." Ethan smiled faintly, warm enough to hurt. Then softly, Ethan said, "You only see your worth when someone else confirms it." The words hit too directly, too honestly. Olivia looked away instantly, because part of her knew he was right. Ethan stepped closer carefully. Then quietly, Ethan continued, "You used to write because it made you feel alive." Olivia's throat tightened unexpectedly. Ethan whispered softly. Ethan said, "I think you forgot that surviving and living aren't the same thing." Silence settled heavily around them. Then Mia suddenly burst through the bookstore door carrying iced coffees and emotional chaos. Mia stopped dramatically after seeing the tension between them. Mia whispered loudly. Mia said, "Oh wow, this is aggressively romantic." Olivia immediately grabbed a paintbrush threateningly. Olivia warned, "Leave." Mia ignored her completely. Instead, she handed Ethan an iced coffee. Mia grinned mischievously. Mia asked casually, So when are you two finally kissing, or should I prepare a spreadsheet? Ethan nearly choked on coffee. Olivia covered her face instantly. Sophia laughed loudly from the counter. Traitor. Mia leaned closer dramatically. Mia whispered, "The entire town already knows you're in love again." Olivia stared at her. Olivia asked weakly, "Again?" Mia nodded proudly. Mia replied, "You never stopped. That's the fun part." Ethan looked away, hiding a smile, which somehow embarrassed Olivia even more. Later that afternoon, after Mia finally stopped emotionally harassing everyone, Olivia and Ethan stood near the back shelves, assembling a new reading table together. The bookstore glowed softly beneath late afternoon sunlight now. Peaceful, warm. Home. Olivia tightened the final screw carefully. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "Why did you really come back to Willow Creek?" Ethan became still, not defensive, just thoughtful. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Because I got tired of surviving places that never felt like mine." Olivia looked toward him slowly. Ethan met her eyes fully now. No walls, no avoiding. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "And because every version of home still looked like you." The air left Olivia's lungs instantly. Silence wrapped around them, soft, dangerous, beautiful. Then, without thinking, she stepped closer. Ethan's eyes dropped briefly toward her lips, and suddenly the entire bookstore felt too small for all the emotions between them. The spring wind moved softly through the open windows. Flower petals drifted across the wooden floor. Then Sophia's voice shouted cheerfully from the front counter. Sophia yelled, "If you two break the tension soon, I can finally sleep peacefully." Olivia burst out laughing immediately. Ethan laughed too, head lowered, smiling fully now. And in that moment, standing together inside the bookstore beneath warm spring light, they didn't feel like strangers trying again. They felt like unfinished love finally finding its way home. Chapter 9. The Photograph. Spring rain arrived softly that evening. Not stormy, not cold, just gentle enough to turn Willow Creek silver beneath glowing streetlights while flower petals collected along sidewalks and rooftops. The bookstore closed early for the first time in weeks. Sophia claimed it was because of the weather. Mia claimed it was because sexual tension had reached unsafe business levels. Olivia Bennett stopped telling Mia to behave days ago. It accomplished nothing. Now Olivia sat cross-legged on the bookstore floor, surrounded by old storage boxes and forgotten photographs, while soft jazz played quietly from the radio nearby. The rain against the windows sounded peaceful, comforting. Until she found the photograph. At first glance, it looked ordinary. A hospital room, white walls, late winter sunlight behind half-open blinds, and Ethan Hayes sitting beside a hospital bed. Olivia's smile faded slowly, because the woman in the bed was unfamiliar, young, beautiful, dark curly hair, weak smile, and Ethan looked devastated beside her. The photograph slipped slightly in Olivia's hands. Then she noticed the date written across the bottom corner. 3 years ago. 3 years after Ethan disappeared from her life. Her chest tightened immediately. The bookstore suddenly felt colder. Olivia stared at the image for several silent seconds, trying to understand why it hurt so much. Then footsteps echoed softly from the staircase upstairs. Ethan. He stepped into the bookstore carrying takeout containers and coffee cups. Spring rain glowed behind him through the windows. Then he noticed the photograph in Olivia's hands. and immediately stopped moving. Silence filled the bookstore instantly. Ethan's entire expression changed. Fear. Real fear. Olivia slowly stood. Olivia asked quietly, "Who is she?" Ethan didn't answer, which somehow hurt worse. The rain outside grew heavier. Soft thunder rolled somewhere distant beyond the lake. Olivia stepped closer, holding the photograph tightly. Olivia whispered, "Ethan." He looked away immediately. Olivia's heart began sinking before he even spoke. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Her name was Lily." Was. Olivia felt cold instantly. Ethan placed the coffees down carefully beside the counter, avoiding her eyes. Then softly, Ethan continued, "We met in New York." The words physically hurt to hear. Not because Ethan loved someone else once, because Olivia suddenly realized there were entire years of his life she knew absolutely nothing about. Years she never got to share. Olivia crossed her arms tightly, protecting herself emotionally before things broke open completely. Olivia asked quietly, "Were you together?" Ethan hesitated too long. Then softly, Ethan answered, "Yes." The bookstore became unbearably silent. Olivia laughed softly, not amused, just wounded. Olivia whispered, "Wow." Ethan finally looked toward her. Pain lived openly in his eyes now. Ethan stepped forward slightly. Ethan said quietly, "Olivia." She shook her head immediately. Olivia whispered sharply, "No." Her chest tightened painfully, because suddenly all those beautiful conversations felt different, complicated, incomplete. Olivia looked down at the photograph again. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "Did you love her?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly, like the answer itself hurt. Then softly, Ethan replied, "I tried to." The honesty shattered her. Not because he said yes, because part of him still sounded guilty for trying. Olivia looked away toward the rain outside, trying to breathe normally, then whispered softly. Olivia asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan stared at her silently for several seconds. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Because I knew it would hurt you." Olivia laughed once bitterly. Olivia whispered, "And hiding it hurts less?" Ethan had no answer for that. Rain moved heavily against the windows while the bookstore lights glowed softly around them. Then Ethan quietly admitted. Ethan said, "After I left Willow Creek, I thought I had to move on." Olivia looked toward him slowly. Ethan continued softly. Ethan whispered, "Lily was kind." A pause. "She helped me through the worst parts of my life." The photograph trembled slightly in Olivia's hands now. Ethan looked down briefly. Then quietly, Ethan said, "But I never loved her the way she deserved." The pain in his voice sounded genuine, real. Olivia's chest tightened again unexpectedly. Because suddenly this wasn't just about jealousy. Someone else got hurt too. Then Ethan whispered the words that changed everything again. Ethan said softly, "She died 2 years ago." Silence. Absolute silence. Olivia stared at him completely stunned. Ethan rubbed one shaking hand against his face. Then quietly, Ethan continued, "Car accident." The bookstore suddenly felt heartbreakingly small. Olivia looked back toward the photograph slowly. Now Ethan's expression beside the hospital bed made sense, not romance. Grief. Ethan sat heavily against the nearby chair. Exhaustion poured from him now. Years of buried guilt finally surfacing. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "I stayed with her until the end because she deserved someone who wouldn't leave." Olivia's eyes filled immediately, because now she understood the true weight Ethan carried all these years. Not just grief, guilt, always guilt. Ethan laughed quietly without humor, then whispered. Ethan said, "And the worst part?" A pause. "I still thought about you every day." The confession shattered the remaining distance between them emotionally. Olivia sat down slowly across from him. Rain continued falling softly outside. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "Did she know?" Ethan looked down at the floor. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Yeah." Olivia's heart broke a little more. Ethan whispered quietly. Ethan said, "Lily once told me she spent our entire relationship competing with a ghost." The bookstore lights flickered softly overhead. Olivia looked toward the photograph again, then whispered. Olivia asked, "Why come back now?" Ethan looked at her fully this time. No hiding left, no walls. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Because losing her made me realize life doesn't wait for people to stop being afraid." Tears finally slipped down Olivia's cheeks quietly. Not because Ethan loved someone else, but because she suddenly realized he spent years trying to survive grief by pretending his heart belonged somewhere else, when part of it never left Willow Creek at all. And somehow, that truth hurt even more. Chapter 10. The Distance Between Us. The rain continued through the night, soft, steady, endless. Olivia Bennett barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the photograph again. Ethan beside another woman, looking broken in ways Olivia had never witnessed herself. And the worst part was, she understood him now, which somehow made everything harder. By morning, Willow Creek looked washed in silver beneath cloudy spring skies. The streets shimmered from rain while flower petals clung to sidewalks and storefront windows. The bookstore felt unusually quiet. Sophia Bennett noticed immediately. Sophia stood behind the counter arranging fresh flowers while watching Olivia reorganize books with unnecessary aggression. Finally, Sophia sighed softly. Sophia asked gently, "What happened?" Olivia didn't look up. Olivia muttered, "Life." Sophia narrowed her eyes knowingly. Sophia replied, "That answer usually means romance." Olivia laughed weakly. Then quietly, Olivia admitted, "I found out Ethan was with someone else." Sophia became still. Olivia continued softly. Olivia said, "She died." Silence settled heavily through the bookstore. Sophia slowly placed the flowers down. Then quietly, Sophia asked, "And what exactly are you hurting about?" Olivia frowned slightly. Olivia whispered, "What kind of question is that?" Sophia stepped closer carefully. Then softly, Sophia replied, "An important one." Warm morning light filtered weakly through the rainy windows. Sophia studied her granddaughter quietly. Then gently, Sophia asked, "Are you hurting because Ethan loved someone else?" A pause. "Or because part of you wanted him to spend 7 years loving only you?" The question hit too directly, too honestly. Olivia looked away immediately, because she didn't know. Maybe both. Sophia smiled sadly. Then softly, Sophia said, "People survive loneliness differently, sweetheart." The words stayed with Olivia long after Sophia walked upstairs. But unfortunately, emotional reflection became impossible around noon, because Ethan arrived at the bookstore, and Olivia's heart still reacted to him immediately despite everything, which felt deeply unfair. He stepped inside carefully, almost cautiously now, like he already sensed the distance between them. Olivia stayed near the shelves, pretending to organize novels she'd already organized twice. Ethan watched her quietly for several seconds. Then softly, Ethan asked, "Can we talk?" Olivia laughed lightly. "Tired." Olivia replied, "That seems to be our favorite form of emotional destruction lately." Ethan accepted that without argument. He walked closer slowly. Spring rain tapped softly against the bookstore windows while soft piano music drifted from the upstairs radio. Ethan stopped beside the reading table. Then quietly, Ethan said, "I should have told you about Lily earlier." Olivia looked toward him finally. Her chest tightened immediately at the exhaustion in his face. Olivia whispered, "Why didn't you?" Ethan hesitated. Then softly, Ethan admitted, "Because I was afraid." Olivia crossed her arms tightly. Olivia asked quietly, "Of what?" Ethan looked directly at her now. No avoiding, no hiding. Then softly, Ethan replied, "That you'd think loving someone else meant I stopped loving you." The truth in his voice hurt more than lies ever could. Olivia looked away quickly, because part of her had thought that. Ethan stepped closer. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "Olivia, losing you broke something in me." Her throat tightened painfully. Ethan continued softly. Ethan said, "And after enough time passes, people start trying to survive however they can." The bookstore suddenly felt too quiet again. Olivia looked toward him carefully, then whispered. Olivia asked, "Did you ever love her?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Yes." The answer hurt, even though she asked for honesty. But Ethan continued immediately. Ethan whispered softly. Ethan said, "Just differently." Olivia's chest tightened again, because deep down, she understood exactly what he meant. Some people become part of your life. Others become part of who you are. And those two things were never the same. Ethan rubbed both hands together nervously now, something Olivia rarely saw. Then quietly, Ethan admitted, Lily deserved someone emotionally whole. Olivia looked toward him slowly. Ethan laughed softly without humor, then whispered. Ethan said, "But part of me stayed here with you." Tears burned behind Olivia's eyes immediately, because she could finally see it now. All these years, Ethan wasn't trying to replace her. He was trying to survive without her. And apparently, he failed at that too. The rain outside softened gradually while sunlight began breaking through clouds over Willow Creek. Spring returning again. Olivia stepped toward the window quietly, trying to breathe through emotions she no longer understood properly. Then softly, Olivia whispered, "I don't know what to do with all this." Ethan looked toward her carefully. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "You don't have to decide today." Silence settled gently between them, less sharp now, more honest. Then Ethan suddenly pulled something from his jacket pocket, a folded envelope, worn from time. Olivia frowned slightly. Ethan walked toward her slowly, then handed it over carefully. Olivia looked down at the envelope and immediately froze. Her name was written across the front in Ethan's handwriting. The date beneath it nearly stopped her breathing. 5 years ago. Olivia looked up instantly. Ethan smiled faintly, sadness living inside it again. Then softly, Ethan admitted, "I wrote to you for years." Her hands trembled slightly, holding the letter. Olivia whispered, "Why didn't you send them?" Ethan looked toward the floor briefly. Then quietly, Ethan replied, because every version sounded like I was asking you to wait for me. The bookstore blurred slightly through sudden tears. Olivia stared down at the unopened letter. A version of Ethan she never got to know lived inside those pages. And suddenly, the distance between them didn't feel emotional anymore. It felt like years stolen by silence. Chapter 11. The Last Dance. Spring arrived fully in Willow Creek the following weekend. Cherry blossoms covered the streets completely now, while warm sunlight turned the entire town gold beneath cloudless skies. Music drifted from open cafe windows. People filled the sidewalks laughing, shopping, living ordinary, happy lives. And unfortunately, Olivia Bennett had agreed to attend a wedding, which already felt emotionally dangerous. But the real problem? Ethan Hayes was also invited. Mia Collins stood inside Olivia's bedroom holding up two dresses dramatically like a reality show host preparing emotional warfare. Mia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Mia asked, "So are we dressing for revenge, reconciliation, or psychological damage tonight?" Olivia sat on the bed staring blankly at her closet. Olivia muttered, "I'm dressing for survival." Mia nodded thoughtfully. Mia replied, "Fair. Weddings are emotionally violent." Olivia looked toward the unopened letters sitting beside her nightstand. The letters Ethan wrote over 5 years. Letters she still hadn't read. Every time she tried, fear stopped her. Because some truths change people permanently once understood. Mia noticed her staring. Then quietly, Mia asked softly, "You still haven't opened them?" Olivia shook her head once. Olivia whispered, "I'm scared." Mia sat beside her carefully. Then softly, Mia replied, "Of what?" Olivia looked down at her hands. Then quietly, Olivia admitted, "That I'll realize we wasted years loving each other silently." Mia's expression softened instantly. Then gently, Mia said, "Olivia, I think you already know that." The wedding took place near Willow Lake just before sunset. White flowers lined the aisle, while soft string lights hung through the trees surrounding the outdoor venue. Warm spring wind moved gently across the water, carrying music and laughter through the evening air. Everything looked beautiful, painfully beautiful. Olivia stepped onto the lakeside path wearing a soft blue dress that Mia claimed made Ethan emotionally vulnerable on sight. Honestly, probably accurate. And right on cue, Olivia saw him. Ethan stood near the lake speaking quietly with the groom beneath glowing lantern lights. Dark suit, sleeves rolled slightly upward, spring sunset reflecting across his face. And once again, Olivia's heart completely betrayed her. Ethan looked up, then froze slightly after seeing her. The world around them seemed to soften immediately. Music faded, voices blurred. Only that look remained. The same look Ethan always gave her, like losing her once nearly destroyed him. Mia whispered proudly beside Olivia. Mia said, "Oh, he is absolutely gone for you." Olivia elbowed her immediately. Before she could recover emotionally, Ethan walked toward her slowly. Warm spring wind moved through the trees around them while soft golden sunlight shimmered across the lake behind him. He stopped directly in front of her. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "You look beautiful." Her chest tightened instantly. Olivia looked down briefly, trying to hide her reaction. Then softly, Olivia replied, "You clean up surprisingly well for someone emotionally exhausting." Ethan laughed softly. "God, That laugh again. The ceremony began shortly after sunset. Guests gathered beneath glowing lantern lights while soft piano music drifted across the lake. Olivia sat beside Ethan accidentally on purpose. Their shoulders brushed once, then stayed touching slightly afterward. Neither moved away, which honestly felt more intimate than actual kissing at this point. The bride walked slowly down the aisle beneath falling flower petals, while the groom immediately started crying in front of everyone. Mia whispered dramatically from behind them. Mia said, "Men in love are my favorite genre." Olivia laughed quietly, then glanced toward Ethan instinctively, and caught him already looking at her. Not casually, not briefly, like she was the only thing in the world making sense to him right now. Olivia looked away too quickly, heart racing. Later that evening, music and dancing filled the lakeside reception while warm spring lights reflected across the water beautifully. Olivia stood near the dessert table pretending not to notice Ethan watching her from across the dance floor. Sophia appeared beside her carrying champagne. Sophia smiled knowingly. Sophia asked gently, "How long are you planning to keep pretending?" Olivia sighed heavily. Olivia whispered, "I don't know what we're doing." Sophia looked toward Ethan across the reception. Then softly, Sophia replied, "Looks like falling in love again to me." Before Olivia could answer, the music changed. Slow, romantic, emotionally illegal. Ethan walked toward her immediately. Olivia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Olivia asked quietly, "Why are you approaching me during this song specifically?" Ethan smiled faintly. Then, softly, Ethan replied, "Because I enjoy making difficult decisions worse." Olivia laughed despite herself. Then Ethan held out his hand carefully and quietly asked. Ethan whispered, "Dance with me." Her heart already answered before her mouth could. Olivia placed her hand in his. The moment Ethan pulled her gently toward the dance floor, everything around them disappeared again. Warm lights glowed above the lake. Spring wind moved softly through the trees. Music wrapped around them beautifully while Ethan's hand rested carefully against her waist. Too careful. Like she was something breakable. Olivia looked up at him slowly, then whispered. Olivia asked, "Why do you always look at me like that?" Ethan frowned slightly. Ethan asked quietly, "Like what?" Olivia's breath caught briefly. Then softly, Olivia replied, "Like you're afraid I'll disappear." The truth in the question visibly affected him. Ethan looked away briefly before answering. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "Because you almost did." The words shattered her composure completely. They moved slowly beneath the spring lights while everyone else around them faded into background noise. Then Olivia finally asked the question she'd been avoiding for days. Olivia whispered softly, "Why did you really come back, Ethan?" He became very still. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Because I got tired of imagining a life without you in it." The music softened around them. The lake shimmered beneath moonlight, and for one terrifyingly beautiful moment, it felt like fate had finally stopped fighting them. Then Olivia noticed someone standing near the reception entrance watching them silently. Daniel Brooks. And suddenly, the night changed again. Chapter 12. When Love Hurts Quietly. Daniel Brooks should not have affected Olivia anymore. That was the problem. The moment she saw him standing beneath the reception lights, everything became complicated again. Not because she still loved him, Because he belonged to a version of her life she hadn't fully buried yet. Ethan noticed the shift in her expression immediately. Of course he did. He always noticed. The music continued softly around them while couples danced beneath glowing lantern lights near the lake. But suddenly, Olivia couldn't breathe normally anymore. Ethan's hand loosened carefully from her waist. Then quietly, Ethan asked, "Do you want me to leave?" The question hurt, because he sounded prepared for the answer to be yes. Olivia looked toward him quickly. Olivia whispered, "No." Ethan studied her face for several seconds, trying to understand emotions she barely understood herself. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Okay." Daniel slowly approached across the reception lawn, more tired than confident this time, less polished, more honest, which somehow made him harder to dislike. He stopped a few feet away from them. Then quietly, Daniel said, "I'm interrupting again. That's becoming a pattern." Olivia crossed her arms carefully. Olivia asked softly, "Why are you here?" Daniel looked toward the lake briefly before answering. Then quietly, Daniel replied, "To apologize properly." Ethan immediately stepped backward, creating space. Respectful, controlled. But Olivia noticed one thing instantly. He looked emotionally prepared to lose her already, and that realization unsettled her more than Daniel's arrival itself. Daniel glanced toward Ethan briefly. Then quietly, Daniel asked, "Can I talk to Olivia alone for a minute?" Silence settled between them. Olivia looked toward Ethan instinctively. Again and again. That unconscious habit carried too much meaning. Ethan smiled faintly, sadness hiding behind it beautifully. Then softly, Ethan replied, "I'll be near the lake." He walked away before either of them could answer. Olivia watched him disappear toward the dock beneath glowing lantern lights. And suddenly, part of her already missed him. Daniel noticed immediately. Daniel smiled sadly. Then quietly, Daniel asked, "Do you know you look at him like the rest of the world disappears?" Olivia looked away. Daniel laughed softly without humor. Then whispered, Daniel said, "You never looked at me like that." The honesty in his voice carried no anger, only understanding now. Warm spring wind moved gently through the trees, while music drifted softly across the lake behind them. Daniel stepped closer carefully, then quietly. Daniel admitted, "I think I spent most of our relationship trying to compete with someone who was never actually gone." Olivia's chest tightened immediately, because maybe he was right. Daniel looked toward Ethan standing alone near the dock. Then softly, Daniel continued, "I used to hate him." Olivia frowned slightly. Daniel laughed quietly. Daniel replied, "Not because I knew him." A pause. "Because every time you were sad, it somehow led back to him." The truth settled heavily between them. Olivia whispered softly. Olivia asked, "Why didn't you tell me you felt this way?" Daniel smiled weakly. Then quietly, Daniel admitted, "Because I kept thinking eventually you'd love me enough to forget him." Silence. Painfully honest silence. Then Daniel reached into his coat pocket slowly and handed Olivia a small folded paper. Olivia frowned. Daniel whispered softly. Daniel said, "Your old apartment lease." She blinked in confusion. Daniel smiled sadly. Then quietly, Daniel explained, "I renewed it." Olivia froze. Daniel looked down briefly, then whispered, Daniel said. "I thought maybe if you came back to New York." A pause. "We could try again." Her chest tightened painfully. Not because she wanted that life anymore, because part of her once begged for it. Daniel looked toward her carefully. Then softly, Daniel asked, "Do you love him?" The question arrived gently this time. No jealousy, no competition, only truth. Olivia looked toward Ethan standing near the lake beneath the spring lights. He stared quietly across the water alone, hands inside his pockets, shoulders carrying invisible weight again. And suddenly, everything inside her became clear. Not easy, not simple, but clear. Olivia whispered softly. "Yes." Daniel closed his eyes briefly, pain crossing his face despite expecting the answer already. Then slowly, he nodded. Daniel smiled sadly. Daniel whispered, "Okay." Olivia stepped closer immediately. Olivia asked softly, "Daniel?" He shook his head gently, then quietly. Daniel replied, "Don't apologize for loving someone honestly." The words nearly broke her, because for the first time, someone finally released her from guilt instead of adding to it. Daniel looked toward Ethan again. Then softly, Daniel said, "Just make sure he deserves it." And before Olivia could answer, Daniel turned and walked slowly toward the parking lot beneath glowing spring lights, leaving quietly this time. No anger, no dramatic goodbye, just acceptance. Olivia stood alone beneath the lanterns for several seconds, heart racing, breathing uneven. Then she turned toward the lake, toward Ethan. He looked up immediately after hearing her footsteps approach, and somehow, just seeing her walk toward him changed his entire expression. Hope, careful but real. Olivia stopped beside him near the dock. Moonlight reflected softly across the lake while spring wind moved gently around them. Neither spoke immediately. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan whispered, "Are you okay?" Olivia looked at him silently for several seconds. Then softly, Olivia replied, "No." Ethan's expression tightened instantly. Olivia stepped closer, closer than before, close enough to hear his breathing. Then quietly, Olivia whispered, "Because I think losing you ruined every version of love that came after." The words shattered something inside him instantly. Ethan looked at her like she just exposed his entire soul publicly. Olivia's eyes filled slowly. Then softly, Olivia admitted, "And the worst part? A pause. I still would have chosen you anyway." The spring wind moved softly through the trees above them. Lantern lights reflected across the lake beautifully. Ethan stepped closer carefully, like he still couldn't believe this was real. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear that." Olivia's breath caught, and finally, after 7 years of silence, heartbreak, distance, and unfinished love, she kissed him, softly at first, carefully, like both of them feared the moment might disappear if touched too quickly. Then Ethan kissed her back like someone finally finding home after years of getting lost. Warm spring air wrapped around them while lantern lights glowed softly across the lake. And somewhere behind all the pain they survived, love finally stopped feeling unfinished. For the first time in years, neither of them pulled away first. Chapter 13. The Second Goodbye. For 3 weeks, Willow Creek felt almost unreal. Warm spring mornings, coffee together at Mia's cafe, late-night walks beside the lake, quiet kisses inside the bookstore when Sophia conveniently forgot to come downstairs. And somehow, Olivia Bennet began feeling alive again, not healed completely, but softer, lighter, like love had finally returned gently instead of painfully, which was exactly why everything fell apart on a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia stood behind the bookstore counter sorting invoices while soft spring sunlight spilled across the shelves. The windows were open. Music played quietly upstairs. Everything felt peaceful. Until Ethan walked in looking terrified. Olivia's stomach dropped instantly, because people in love learn each other's expressions too well. And Ethan looked like bad news wearing human skin. He stopped near the doorway silently. Olivia slowly placed the papers down. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "What happened?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. That alone made her chest tighten. Warm spring wind moved softly through the bookstore around them. Then Ethan finally whispered, "I got an offer in Seattle." Silence. Absolute silence. Olivia stared at him, waiting for the rest, for the part where he says, "But I'm staying." It never came. Ethan looked down briefly. Then softly, Ethan continued, "It's a restoration project. Big contract." Olivia's throat tightened painfully. She whispered carefully. Olivia asked, "How long?" Ethan hesitated. "Too long." Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Permanent." The word physically hurt. Olivia stepped backward slightly, like distance might soften the impact somehow. It didn't. Ethan immediately moved toward her. Ethan whispered quickly. Ethan said, "Olivia, listen to me." She shook her head instantly. Olivia laughed softly. "Broken." Olivia whispered, "You're leaving again." Ethan's face collapsed immediately. Ethan replied sharply, "That's not fair." Olivia looked at him in disbelief. Olivia whispered, "Not fair?" The bookstore suddenly felt unbearably small, too full of memories, too full of promises. Olivia crossed her arms tightly, trying to stop herself from emotionally unraveling in front of him. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "When were you going to tell me?" Ethan looked away. "Mistake. Huge mistake." Olivia's chest tightened instantly. Olivia whispered, "You already accepted it." Silence answered her. Tears burned behind her eyes immediately. Ethan stepped closer desperately. Ethan whispered, "I didn't know how to tell you." Olivia laughed bitterly. Olivia replied, "Apparently your solution to difficult emotions is still disappearing." The words hit hard. She saw it immediately in his face. But she couldn't stop now, not when old wounds were reopening this violently. Ethan rubbed one shaking hand against his forehead. Then quietly, Ethan admitted, "I'm scared." Olivia looked toward him silently. Ethan whispered. Ethan said, "Everything here feels too important." Her chest cracked open painfully, because she understood that fear too. When something matters enough, losing it becomes terrifying. But understanding someone doesn't stop heartbreak from happening. Olivia looked toward the open bookstore windows. Spring wind carried flower petals softly through the air outside. The world looked beautiful while her heart quietly fell apart again. Then softly, Olivia whispered, "So, what happens now?" Ethan stepped closer carefully. Then quietly, Ethan replied, "Come with me." The word stunned her completely. Olivia looked toward him instantly. Ethan's eyes filled with emotion now. Raw, terrified, honest. Then softly, Ethan continued, "I love you." A pause. "And I don't want another life that happens without you in it." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks immediately, because once upon a time, That offer would have meant everything. But now, things were more complicated. Olivia looked around the bookstore slowly, Sophia upstairs humming softly. The shelves she rebuilt herself, the town slowly becoming home again. And deeper than all of that, herself. She finally found herself again in Willow Creek. Olivia whispered shakily. Olivia asked, "And what happens if I lose myself trying to follow you again?" The question visibly shattered him. Because this time, both of them understood what love could cost. Ethan looked toward the floor silently for several seconds. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "I would never ask you to disappear for me." The honesty in his voice nearly destroyed her. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, trying to breathe through the pain building inside her chest. Then quietly, Olivia admitted, "I don't know how to do this." Ethan stepped closer carefully, close enough to touch her, but he didn't. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "Neither do I." Silence wrapped around them heavily. Outside, cherry blossoms drifted slowly through the warm spring air. Beautiful things falling quietly. And suddenly, Olivia realized something terrifying. Love wasn't the difficult part anymore. Timing was. That evening, Ethan sat alone beside Willow Lake watching sunset disappear across the water while Olivia remained inside the bookstore upstairs crying quietly where nobody could hear her. Because sometimes love returns exactly when life becomes too complicated to hold it properly. And for the second time in their lives, goodbye waited between them again. Chapter 14. The Train Station. Willow Creek Station looked heartbreakingly beautiful at sunrise. Soft golden light spilled across the empty platform while warm spring wind carried cherry blossom petals through the quiet morning air. The world felt suspended between leaving and staying, between love and loss. Olivia Bennett ran through the station entrance barely able to breathe. Because Mia Collins had burst into the bookstore 20 minutes earlier, holding her phone like a weapon of emotional destruction. Mia shouted, "He's leaving today." And suddenly, everything inside Olivia stopped pretending. Now her heartbeat thundered violently as she searched the nearly empty station platform. Then she saw him. Ethan Hayes stood near the edge of the platform beside 2 suitcases and a duffel bag, alone. The morning sunlight caught softly across his face while wind moved through his dark hair, and somehow he already looked gone. Olivia slowed slightly, trying to catch her breath, trying to understand why seeing him leave physically hurt. Ethan looked up, and the moment he saw her, every emotion he'd been hiding shattered instantly. Hope, fear, love. Olivia walked toward him slowly. Neither spoke at first. The train tracks hummed softly beneath the morning sunlight while distant birds moved through blooming trees nearby. Then Ethan quietly asked. Ethan whispered, "What are you doing here?" Olivia stared at him in disbelief. Olivia replied breathlessly, "You seriously thought I'd let you leave without fighting for us?" His entire expression changed. Ethan looked away briefly, like the emotion became too much to hold directly. Olivia stepped closer. Then softly, Olivia whispered, "I spent 7 years wishing you'd come back." A pause. "I'm not surviving another goodbye, wondering what would have happened if I stayed." Tears filled Ethan's eyes immediately. He laughed softly under his breath, broken, relieved. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "Olivia." She shook her head quickly. Olivia stepped even closer now, close enough to feel the warmth of him beneath the cool spring air. Then softly, Olivia admitted, "I'm terrified." Ethan looked at her carefully. Olivia continued quietly, "I finally found myself again." A pause. "And I don't know how to love someone without losing pieces of myself anymore." The honesty in her voice visibly affected him. Ethan gently took her hands in his. Then softly, Ethan whispered, "You should never have to." Warm spring wind moved around them, carrying flower petals across the station platform beautifully. Ethan looked directly into her eyes now. No walls, no hiding. Then quietly, Ethan continued, "I don't want the version of you that sacrifices everything for love." Olivia's throat tightened painfully. Ethan smiled sadly. Then softly, Ethan said, "I already lost that girl once." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks immediately, because finally, someone loved her without asking her to disappear first. The train whistle echoed faintly in the distance. Time was running out. Olivia looked toward the approaching train tracks briefly, then back toward Ethan, and quietly asked, Olivia whispered, "What if we fail again?" Ethan stepped closer carefully. Then softly, Ethan replied, "Then at least this time we fail honestly." The answer shattered the final wall inside her chest. Because maybe love was never supposed to guarantee safety. Maybe it only asked for courage. The train slowly approached the station through warm morning light. Ethan looked toward it briefly, then back toward her, and quietly asked, "Come with me." The question hung between them like a heartbeat. Olivia looked toward the town beyond the station, the bookstore, the lake, the life she rebuilt. Then looked back toward Ethan, the person she never stopped loving. And suddenly, the answer became simple. Not easy, but simple. Olivia smiled through tears. Then softly, Olivia whispered, "Only if we stop calling this leaving." Ethan frowned slightly. Olivia stepped closer. Then quietly, Olivia continued, "I'm not running away with you, Ethan." A pause. "I'm choosing a life with you." The emotion on his face nearly destroyed her completely. Ethan laughed softly while tears filled his eyes too, then whispered, "You have no idea how long I've dreamed about hearing that." The train doors opened beside them with a soft mechanical hiss. Neither moved immediately, because suddenly, everything mattered too much. Then Ethan gently touched her face, carefully, like she was something precious finally returned to him, and softly whispered, "I love you." Olivia smiled shakily, then quietly replied, "I know." A pause. "And it still scares me." Ethan laughed softly, then whispered, "Me too." And beneath the warm spring sunrise of Willow Creek, they kissed like two people finally choosing each other at the right time. Not out of loneliness, not out of guilt, not because they were afraid to be alone, but because, after everything, love still felt worth the risk. The train waited beside them patiently, and for once, goodbye did not arrive. Chapter 15. Stay. Seattle felt different from New York immediately. Slower, softer, more forgiving somehow. Spring followed Olivia Bennett and Ethan Hayes there too. Cherry blossoms lined unfamiliar streets, while warm evening sunlight reflected across rain-soaked sidewalks and old brick buildings. The city felt new, but not lonely. That changed everything. 3 months later. Olivia sat cross-legged on the floor of their unfinished apartment, surrounded by books, coffee cups, and half-open moving boxes, while Ethan painted the living room wall for the third time, because apparently architects become emotionally obsessive with paint colors. Olivia watched him silently for several seconds. Then quietly, Olivia asked, "You know nobody can tell the difference between these shades except you, right?" Ethan stepped back, dramatically studying the wall. Then seriously replied, "This one has emotional warmth." Olivia burst out laughing immediately. Ethan looked offended. Ethan asked, "Why are you judging my artistic vision?" Olivia grinned. Olivia replied, "Because your artistic vision looks beige." Ethan dropped the paint roller onto the tray dramatically, then walked toward her slowly. Olivia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Olivia asked carefully, "Why are you approaching me like revenge is romantic?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Warm, dangerous, familiar." Then softly, Ethan whispered, "Because it usually works." Before Olivia could answer, he pulled her gently toward him. She laughed quietly against his chest, while spring sunlight spilled across the apartment floor around them. And suddenly, this felt real. Not temporary, not fragile. Real. Olivia looked up at him softly, then whispered, "You know what's strange?" Ethan brushed a strand of hair behind her ear carefully, then quietly asked, "What?" Olivia smiled faintly. Then softly, Olivia replied, "This doesn't feel like starting over." Ethan's expression softened instantly. Olivia continued quietly, "It feels like finding our way back." Silence wrapped gently around them. Warm, safe. Then Ethan whispered softly, "I think some people belong to each other eventually." Olivia's heart tightened beautifully. Not painfully anymore, beautifully. Because love no longer felt like something she had to survive. It finally felt like peace. Later that evening, rain tapped softly against the apartment windows while city lights glowed below them. Olivia sat at the kitchen counter typing again for the first time in almost 2 years. Writing no longer felt like failure. It felt like breathing. Ethan noticed immediately from across the room. He smiled quietly, then softly asked, "What are you working on?" Olivia looked toward him, then grinned slightly. Olivia replied, "A love story." Ethan walked closer slowly, then quietly, "Happy ending?" Olivia pretended to think carefully, then softly, "Still deciding." Ethan laughed under his breath, then leaned down, kissing her forehead gently, and whispered, "Well, I vote yes." Months passed quietly after that. They built routines together. Morning coffee, late-night grocery runs, arguments about furniture, kissing during thunderstorms, phone calls to Sophia every Sunday. And somewhere inside all the ordinary moments, love became less dramatic, but deeper, because real love wasn't always grand speeches beneath lantern lights. Sometimes, it was simply choosing someone every day after the excitement faded. One warm spring evening nearly a year later, Olivia and Ethan returned to Willow Creek together. The town looked exactly the same. Cherry blossoms drifting through the streets, warm sunset across the lake, soft music from Mia's cafe. Sophia cried immediately after seeing them together again. Mia demanded emotional compensation for surviving their romantic tension, and somehow, everything finally felt complete. That night, Olivia stood beside the lake watching lantern lights shimmer across the water while warm spring wind moved softly through the trees. Ethan walked beside her quietly, then softly asked, "What are you thinking about?" Olivia smiled faintly, then whispered, "How strange it is." A pause. "That losing you once taught me how to love myself properly." Ethan looked toward her silently, emotion visible immediately now. No more hiding. Olivia stepped closer carefully. Then softly, Olivia continued, "And loving myself properly taught me how to love you without fear." Tears filled Ethan's eyes instantly. He laughed softly under his breath, then quietly whispered, "You say things that ruin me emotionally." Olivia grinned. Olivia replied, "Good." The lake shimmered beneath the spring night while lantern lights reflected softly across the water. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket slowly. Olivia frowned slightly. Ethan looked suddenly nervous. Actually nervous, which immediately terrified her. Olivia whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan laughed shakily. Then softly, "Yeah, that's about right." And there beside the lake where they first learned a heartbreak together, Ethan Hayes dropped to one knee. Olivia covered her mouth instantly, tears already falling. Ethan looked up at her like she was every version of home he spent years searching for. Then quietly, Ethan whispered, "I spent too much of my life leaving things I loved." A pause. "I don't want to leave you ever again." The spring wind moved softly through the trees around them. Lantern lights glowed beautifully across the lake. Then Ethan smiled through nervous tears and softly asked, "Stay." Olivia laughed through tears immediately, then whispered, "You idiot." Ethan looked concerned briefly. Olivia dropped to her knees beside him, then kissed him softly before answering, and quietly whispered, "Always." Above Willow Creek. Cherry blossoms drifted slowly through the warm spring night, and somewhere between first heartbreak and second chances, two people finally found the right ending.